Well, EVMS announced it will look into past yearbooks and campus culture after Northam's picture went viral in public. Now, 9 community leaders are part of a new advisory board that will independently investigate past yearbooks.
13 News Now reporter Megan Shin is here now to share how one of the board members plans to make a difference.
Yeah, that's right. I spoke with Delcino Miles. She says the board of directors asked her and the other community leaders to join their group. The entire board is made of volunteers with a variety of occupations and proven leadership in the community. At the request of the president of EVMS, they hope to make changes to the yearbooks and the med school culture.
It's been historic.
After a huge week of controversy in the Commonwealth, Delcino Miles wants to make a difference any way she can.
This is an important task, and I don't take it lightly.
That means officially joining the External Advisory Board, investigating Eastern Virginia Medical School's past yearbooks.
I'm hoping that as a woman of color, that my perspective can make a difference in this group discussion as we move forward with our work.
The groundwork for the committee started when a racist photo from Governor Ralph Northam's 1984 EVMS yearbook page surfaced. After that, racist photos and other yearbooks came to light. Miles wants the board to work on more than just old pictures and old books.
The fact that they were allowed to be printed makes me pause and wonder what the policies were back then.
Now it's about taking new policies that can create a better environment at the school.
This is a starting place for them to not only change the culture, but also change the way that our next generation of healthcare professionals treat their patients. This is an opportunity for us to make some changes and make some recommendations to EVMS and hope that they embrace and implement those changes immediately.
The advisory board is working on scheduling their first meeting. Miles says the date should be set in the next 2 to 3 weeks.